Good hello friends, let's wrap up March. So the month of March was weird. Given that the most important change in March was my first official work trip, I actually didn't spend a lot of time reading. I spent a lot of time listening to audiobooks. March, while not my best reading month in terms of my physical books, was still a pretty good month in terms of how much I read or listened to. Without further ado, I'm just gonna go ahead and get right into it. The first book that I read was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I reread this in preparation for the Daisy Jones and the Six adaptation, and I won't bombard you with more Daisy Jones and the Six, but I did an entire vlog series on this that is already up on my channel. I reread the book in the first episode of that series, and of course watched the rest of the adaptation in the following episodes, and I had the best time. Do not hesitate to go and check that video out because it was a lot of fun. I freaking love this book. 5 out of 5 stars the second time around. Daisy Jones and the Six, if you don't know, is the story of this ultimate rock band. They are the moment. They are everything, truly. It's originally the lead guitarist slash singer's band Billy Dunn. Him and his brother start off as the Dunn Brothers and then evolve into the Six and then evolve into Daisy Jones and the Six, and it's just so good. The next book that I listened to and finished in March was The Light Pirate. This is by Lily Brooks Dalton. Now, this was a complicated read. It is a dense book that I probably would have DNF'd if I was reading it physically. So I'm really glad that I listened to it over audio because there were just some moments that, like, I don't know if I would have been able to wrap my head around had I been reading it physically. Sometimes stories are better told than read, in my opinion. I think you guys know I'm a big fan of audiobooks, and this is one of those stories that I needed to be told to me as opposed to sitting down and reading it myself. I don't really know how to describe this, so I'm gonna go ahead and play with a synopsis a little bit. We're in Florida. We're in this post-apocalyptic world where sea levels are rising. There are some really intense storms taking Florida's weather to the extreme. There's a hurricane that hits the coast called Hurricane Wanda. The beginning of the story is the birth of who is later our main character, Wanda, who is born on the day of the storm, the big storm. From there, we follow her journey as she learns to kind of traverse this land without the guidance of her direct family. Although her family still is there to an extent, it's not the typical family canon that you would expect. It's very much a found family story, even if that family means two and some mystical being. I don't know how to describe this book. It's very strange. It's technically considered a dystopian sci-fi mixed with magical realism. All in all, I gave this like a 3.75 4-star. I probably would give it like a 3.5 at this point thinking about it, but I definitely value the story for what it is. It was a wild story, and the magical realism aspects of it were just so cool. Was I confused throughout the majority of the book? Yes. Did I still love these characters? Like, absolutely. I feel like they came off the page really interesting. I just think the writing style wasn't great, and that's why I probably would have DNF'd it if I was reading it physically, but having it read to me made it a lot easier to get through. This was one of those books where I don't know how or why I loaned it out through my library, but I did, and I read it, and it was cool. The next book that I'm gonna mention is The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. I have started rereading The Bone Season, and I loved it. I loved book 1, gave it a 5-star. I also read book 2. I don't remember if I gave this 5-star. 5-star? 4.5 stars? Something like that. But I'm going to talk about both of these together because I have an entire video that should already be out or is coming out dedicated to rereading The Bone Season and reading the Mindwater for the first time. They are chonkers, nearly 1,000 pages between these two books alone, but I freaking love them. I love this story. Probably a good idea to tell you what the story is now, but I will save that for the video to go live very soon. I am just a very big fan of this series. I read both of these, not necessarily back to back, but in terms of physical books, these were the next two books that I read physically, and I cannot wait to get to The Song Rising and The Dawn Chorus very soon. Into the rest of the audiobooks. This is where things get not so much complicated, but it's like I was on a mission to read all of Jasmine Guillory's books. I started The Proposal by Jasmine Guillory, which is book 2 in the, what is it called? The Wedding Date series. Essentially, all of these books, as most romance books are, within a series in particular, particular follow different characters and can be read as standalones, but all fall within the same general universe, and you might end up seeing old characters from older books and they might lump into each other's storylines very slightly, not so much intensely, but they are all very much so their own stories. For these guys, I'm going to talk about them in order of my favorite to least favorite, starting with Party of Two, which is book number 5 in this series. I actually haven't read the very last one, which is called While We Were Dating. I have it loaned out from my library and I'm going to listen to it, but I haven't gotten to it yet, so that's gonna happen in April. But starting with Party of Two, which is book number 5 and arguably the most normal scenario of all of our characters so far. We have Max, who's a senator, and Olivia, who's a lawyer who moved to LA from New York City. They end up meeting very casually one day. It's a very simple meet cute. He sends her cake in hopes of seeing her again. She's like, yeah, sure, this will be a quick fling, whatever. And it very quickly turns into much more than that. The reason why Party of Two is my favorite of all of them is because Jasmine Guillory's books have this overarching storyline of the girl thinks it's gonna be something quick, something easy, a fling, a hookup, a friends with benefits situation, but somebody ends up catching feelings. And it comes out in such a way where it's like they almost sound disgusted at the idea of a relationship, and it causes such a weird rift and that third act conflict that just is like gross and like lame. Quite frankly, this pattern, I was getting really sick of it because I was like, okay, like let's do something different, let's spice it up a little bit, let's put any other conflict in here. But alas, that is a theme of Jasmine Guillory's books. The reason I like Party of Two is because they have this realization, but in a much different context. They really just sit there and they're like, they are a couple. They end up dating and it's not weird. It was a very natural progression and it was really sweet getting to listen to their relationship blossom and develop. The third act conflict in this one, I think, was the most logical of all of the third act conflict. That's basically why it's my favorite. Albeit it is the most normal and like average story of how the characters meet. I think the story overall was told really well. The next book that I really enjoyed in this series is The Proposal. This is book 2. This is the one where they meet at Dodger Stadium, which I just thought this whole premise was so stupid and ridiculous in like the most entertaining way possible. Like, this is a scenario that I just could not believe was happening, and the scenario being our main character Alexa, no, just kidding, Nicole. Are Alexa and Drew in the first book? I think so. Nicole, very particularly spelled with a K. Nicole gets proposed to by her fling boyfriend, who doesn't really know her, actor wannabe dude, at Dodger Stadium. He spells her name wrong on the scoreboard and she literally does not believe it's happening. This dude is like the prima donna boy, or at least he likes to think that he is, of LA. I just thought this premise was so funny because then she gets swept up by Carlos, our main male character's friends and family. They sweep her away, they go have lunch, and you think that's it. Mysterious stranger are out. Nope, their story evolves into something so much more, and I loved it. It was a great story. I feel like my expectations were, I don't know, I feel like I didn't know what to expect, but I loved it. I had so much fun reading this one. However, the very abrupt change that happens in this book, like the dynamic shift between our characters, literally I screamed what in the middle of this book. I could not believe that I was listening to what I was listening to, just because I was like, there's no way that this is actually happening. I had my own personal heartbreak listening to these characters break their relationship apart and kind of fall apart, and it was kind of sad. But of course, like most romance books, they get back together, everything's fine and dandy. It just was a little chaotic, so I gave this one a 4-star. Third on the list, which is actually third in the series, is The Wedding Date. Oh, I loved this trope, very particularly because it's fake dating. Or not fake dating, it's secret dating. They're hiding their relationship. Maddie and Theo are celebrating their best friend Alexa's wedding. Alexa was in the first book, and what I love about this one in particular is just this trope of them secretly falling in love with each other, and it's only up until the wedding. I just think that's funny because it's like, oh, we'll go out on dates and we'll hang out and we'll basically boyfriend and girlfriend, but we're not gonna call ourselves that. However, it's only until the wedding. So once the wedding rolls around, we don't have to do this anymore, you know? It's chill. We're cool. I feel like the dynamic between Maddie and Theo was built a lot better than that of Nicole and Carlos. I don't know why, I just felt more connected to these characters and I felt like they understood each other a little bit more. So I had more fun learning about them and just trying to gauge their relationship a little bit more. This should not be sold as a hate to love. They hate each other for about 30 seconds. Simple as that. They don't really hate each other for the majority of the book and end up falling in love very quickly. So I digress. I love this. I had a lot of fun with it. However, it was not my favorite of the 4 that I read last month, and I gave this a 3.5. This is the only one that I rated a 3-star so far. The other 2 on Goodreads were rated a 4, but it was like 4.5, 4, dropping it down to 3. And now for my least favorite of all of them, and I don't really understand why the story was told, and that is Royal Holiday. This is book number 4. I gave this a 2.5. Honestly, I'm just gonna round it down to a 2. I hated this book. I knew from the beginning that I was gonna hate it because the audiobook had like really bad English accents, and they're in England, and it's supposed to be a holiday story, and I don't even know what the names of the main characters are. I don't know. I was just really thrown off by this because the age dynamics between the other main characters, they're all in like their like late 20s, 30s, right, in the 20 to 30 range, and they're just stepping into their careers. They're not super successful. It feels very relatable. And then this one is Vivian Forrest, who has a daughter called Maddie, and the main character Malcolm Hudson, who's worked for the Queen for years. I don't know. I don't know why we changed demographics. I don't know why we have a holiday novel in England of all places. The rest of the books take place in LA. I really just didn't like this. I didn't understand the point of it. I didn't like the writing style. I didn't like the duo. I don't know. There were a handful of sweet moments, but I feel like those handful of sweet moments could have been picked up, put into like a companion novella where she takes like additional scenes from each book and puts them into one bind up and sells it like that. Like, I think that would have been really fun. Or like a oh my god, a holiday story of all of the characters up until this point, as well as one for Vivian Forrest, but no, she didn't do that. She had a whole book for Vivian. I don't think Vivian deserved a whole book. Anyway, like I said, last on this list is While We Were Dating. This is one that I already have from my library, and I'm super pumped to wrap up essentially all of Jasmine Guillory's books so far. I'm looking forward to whatever she might put out in the future, and I will definitely be keeping her on my radar as an author that I'm going to be following. Alright guys, so that wraps up March. Those are all the books that I read and listened to. I am pretty proud because I read over 1,000 physical pages thanks to these 2 chonkers and my reread of Daisy Jones, which this right here feels like an accomplishment all on its own, and I'm really proud of myself for it. And my audiobooks. I was traveling a lot and I got to listen to a lot of great audiobooks, albeit I might be back in my romance era. I don't know. I don't think I am, because I have like a good mix of my romance and fantasy as well as my audiobooks, so I feel like I'm in a really good place in my reading. And to be fair, I have now read 21 books in 2023. My reading goal is 33. So I'm already off to such a great start for the first quarter of the year. Like, I'm so pumped and so happy that this is how my reading is turning out, because I'm making it more of a priority. I'm reading almost every single day and it's just been fun. With that being said, I am just so glad to have had you guys here this month, and I really hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And until then, I'll catch you in the next one.